Part 1, The Awakening Blow. When you're locked up by your own mind. Have you ever woken up one morning and everything seemed fine, except your mind felt like a prison? No chains, no locked doors, no one holding you captive, yet somehow you're stuck. Your eyes open, and before you even leave the bed, a flood of thoughts crashes in like a tidal wave. The unfinished tasks, the regrets of the past, the fears of the future, all tangled together, weaving a sticky web that clings to every corner of your mind. You don't know why you're sad or why you're so tired, but one thing's clear. Your mind is running like a ruthless machine, and you don't know how to shut it off. There are days no one hurts you, yet you still feel pain. No one criticizes you, yet you feel worthless. No one threatens you, yet you feel fear. You don't need an enemy, because you, or more precisely, your mind, has already done the job too well. It whispers venom into your ear. You're going to fail. No one really cares about you. You're wasting your life. And just like that, you're held back, as if some invisible hand is pulling you away from everything you want to do. Maybe you're smiling at others, but inside you're shattered. Maybe you're working, talking, driving, even loving, but your mind keeps racing, dragging you through thoughts that exhaust you. As if you're no longer living in the real world, but merely surviving inside a head that never stops spinning. And the saddest part? No one sees it. No one knows you're imprisoned because your prison is invisible. No one hears the echo of those late-night conversations you have with yourself, but you hear them, and they wear you down to the bone. If you've ever been through that, you're not alone. Every one of us has at some point been held captive by our own mind. And it's in that moment, when there's nowhere left to hide, that the question begins to surface. Is there a way out of this prison? The answer is yes. And it doesn't lie in numbing your emotions or pretending everything's fine. It lies in facing your mind and learning how to master it. This is where Stoicism enters, not as a soft blanket to hide under, but as a mirror that reflects your soul, unfiltered, unjudging, only the truth. Stoicism doesn't come to soothe you. It comes to wake you up. Marcus Aurelius, emperor warrior, philosopher, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He faced wars, betrayal, loss, and still remained calm, not because life was easy, but because he understood one thing. If your mind is steady, no one can make you fall. Stoicism doesn't teach you to escape emotion. It teaches you to face fear without flinching, to walk through anger without being consumed, and to stand firm in uncertainty without trembling. It doesn't tell you sadness is bad. It simply asks, will you let sadness define you, or will you define it? And the first thing you need to understand is this: you are not your mind. You are the one observing it. But most of the time, you forget that. You let the mind overtake you, steer you, make you believe that its anxious noise is truth. But in reality, you're living with a companion, a dangerous one called the mind. And if you don't learn to lead it, it will lead you somewhere you never wanted to go. In the next part, we will unmask this companion, because your mind can be a genius. Part 2, the mind. Architect of heaven or hell. Your mind can be your guardian angel, or the kidnapper of your soul, every single day. Sounds dramatic? Then think about this. How many times in your life has your own thinking dragged you into panic, fear, and anxiety, even when nothing dangerous was actually happening around you? How many times has an ordinary morning turned heavy just because an old memory resurfaced or an imaginary disaster loomed in your head. The truth is, no one needs to hurt you. Your mind just has to play the wrong tape, and your entire day spirals into hell. And what makes it worse is that you blame life, not realizing it's your mind's doing. First, understand this. Your mind is not you. It's a tool. Like a knife, it can slice cake or cause injury. The mind is a brilliant machine built to think, react, imagine, remember. But it is not your true essence. It's more like a projector, casting films inside your head. And what you see on that screen isn't necessarily reality, but an edit that your mind is replaying. Every time you feel anxious, angry, jealous, or let down, you're not reacting to reality. You're reacting to a movie playing in your head, a film directed by your mind, with a script written by the beliefs you've collected. Imagine your mind as a giant keyboard. Every key you press triggers a thought. Some keys release joy, energy, peace. Others echo with regret, insecurity, fear. The problem is, you've grown used to hitting the negative keys without even realizing it. Each morning, instead of tapping, "I'm grateful to be alive today," you automatically press, "I'm so tired, just another miserable day." And the strange part? This keyboard listens to you perfectly. It creates exactly the emotions you just activated. But here's the good news. You can learn to type differently. You can choose new keys. This isn't toxic positivity. It's awareness. It's the ability to realize, I can't control everything that happens, but I can choose how I respond. And that choice is the line between emotional imprisonment and inner freedom. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "People are not disturbed by events, but by their opinions about those events." What causes your suffering isn't the message from your partner. It's the story you tell yourself about it. What triggers your fear isn't your boss's comment. It's how you decode it in your head. We don't live in reality. We live in our interpretation of reality. And if you don't control your interpretation, no one can save you from your own mind. You might walk into a rainy day and think, "Damn it, rain again, everything sucks." Or you could look at that same rain and say, "Today's a good day to slow down, brew some tea, and listen to myself." The rain doesn't change. Your mind does. And with it, your experience transforms. Happiness, then, doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from how your mind responds to them. Some live in luxury and suffer endlessly. Others have little, but carry peace. The difference doesn't lie in their environment. It lies in the software running inside. That's why Stoicism doesn't focus on changing the outside world. It's all about mastering the inner world, because the one who commands their mind is unbeatable. That person can stand in the storm without trembling, can hear an insult without lashing out, can lose everything on the outside yet remain grounded within. Not because they're numb, but because they've chosen how to feel. Pause for a moment. Close your eyes. What soundtrack is playing in your head? A tense score? An anxious monologue? Or a noisy loop of self-criticism? If so, remember this. You chose that track, and you can change it. The mind is a tool. You can't switch it off, but you can learn to run it. And when you use it the right way, it's no longer the kidnapper of your soul. It becomes your companion, your loyal assistant, a true guardian angel. In the next part, you'll learn not just to observe your mind, but to master your emotions, not by running from them, but by stepping directly into their center with eyes wide open and a calm heart. Because only when you sit in the driver's seat will your emotions stop steering the wheel of your life toward heaven or toward hell? It all comes down to one thing. Who's driving? Part 3. Emotional self-mastery. Not escape, but dominion. Emotions are not your enemy. Losing control is. What makes you fall apart isn't anger, sadness, or fear. It's when those emotions show up and you immediately surrender, letting them take the wheel and drive your life wherever they please, as if you handed over the steering wheel of your life to a tantrum-throwing child. Have you ever felt this? Someone hurts you, maybe with a careless comment, a cold message, or a small act of neglect. You feel offended, dismissed, and in that moment, nothing else matters. You react. You fire back, raise your voice, explode, an emotional outburst. Then hours or days later, once the storm has passed, regret creeps in. I should have stayed silent. I shouldn't have said that. I should have kept calm. But by the time should have enters, the damage is done. And what's left is the mess you now have to clean up. Stoicism doesn't tell you not to feel sadness or anger or pain. It doesn't teach you to become a stone-cold statue. On the contrary, it teaches you something far harder: self-mastery. Not the suppression of emotion, but its direction. You don't need to extinguish the fire. You just need to turn it into fuel instead of letting it burn you down. Emotions are a deeply human part of us, but they're like a wild horse, powerful, fierce, uncontainable by force, yet fully trainable. Left untrained, that horse runs wild, dragging you far from the path you meant to walk. But if you learn to hold the reins, if you understand its language and give it purpose, that very horse will carry you through life's toughest journeys with grace and strength. Remember this: emotions are not wrong, but you must be the one to choose your response. Anger isn't bad. It's simply a signal that your boundary was crossed, your dignity bruised. But if you let it erupt unchecked, without the light of reason, it causes more harm than the original offense. Seneca once wrote, "Anger, if not restrained, is more destructive than any enemy." That's why the wise don't suppress emotions. They listen to them. They let emotions speak, but never hand them the wheel. Emotional self-mastery is a skill. No one's born with it, but anyone can train it, like building muscle. You can't expect to stay calm in the face of insult if you've never practiced calmness in the little things. You can't control a storm if you've never learned to watch the first winds. And that's what Stoicism emphasizes: practice, even when you don't yet need it, so that when the storm comes, you don't panic. And you know what? In a world where everyone reacts on impulse, the one who can master themselves is the one who's truly free. Because freedom isn't doing whatever you feel like. Freedom is knowing exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and being able to not do what's unnecessary. When you can stand in the middle of provocation, of verbal or emotional attack, and remain calm, that is real power. Emotions are like a river. When you know how to guide the flow, it nourishes. When you let it overflow, it destroys. And you, the one reading this, can absolutely learn to guide that flow. Restraint is freedom. Self-mastery is power. In the next part, you'll face another invisible enemy. Not emotion, but imagination. A brilliant director, but one that often specializes in horror films. So maybe it's time you took back the camera. Part 4, Decrypting Imagination. The horror movie you direct yourself. We are not hurt by reality. We are hurt by the horror movies we direct in our own minds. Do you see it now? So often what terrifies you isn't the event itself, but the script you've written before anything has even begun. Just one text. We need to talk. And your mind instantly powers up the projector. Scene 1, a serious face. Scene 2, a breakup. Scene 3, you, alone in the rain, collapsing. In reality, they just want to discuss weekend plans. But in your head, the credits have already rolled, the tears have already fallen, the pain has already been lived, though nothing has actually happened. Or take an email from your boss. No subject, no emotion, just, see me at 3. You read it, you reread it, your heart starts pounding. What did I mess up? Did someone complain? Am I getting fired? And just like that, you live the next few hours trapped in a reality that doesn't exist. You shrink, you brace, you worry. And in the end, it turns out they just need your help on a new task. Everything you imagined, none of it real. But the stress, the tension, the anxiety, completely real. That is the power and the danger of imagination. It's a brilliant filmmaker. But unfortunately, it's addicted to tragedy. It doesn't need facts. It doesn't need scripts. Just give it a vague situation, and it'll spin a disaster storyline so vivid you'll believe it's inevitable. And you, the sole viewer of this movie, forget that you are also the director. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." He didn't mean stop imagining. He meant recognize the force of imagination and learn how to steer it. Imagination isn't your enemy. It's a tool, an incredibly powerful one. But like any tool, if you don't control it, it will injure you. So how do you turn imagination from a saboteur into an ally? The first step is recognizing when you're making a movie. When you notice yourself tensing up over a scenario that hasn't even happened, pause and ask, is this real or just a film in my head? That question is the power switch, the pause button at the climax. It gives you back the reins. The next step is learning to direct a better movie. If you can imagine failure, you can imagine success. If you can play out a tearful breakup, you can visualize an open, respectful conversation. If you can build the worst-case scenario, you also have the right to create the best-case one. Try changing the genre. If your imagination is skilled at horror, retrain it to make inspiration. Let your mind craft a story you want to live in, not one you're desperate to escape. Because in the end, you're the director, and you have the right to rewrite the script. Picture this. You walk into a room, hands trembling, bracing for the worst. But instead of letting your mind fast forward to a dark ending, you stop, take a deep breath, and think, maybe this will be okay. Maybe this is an opportunity. You don't know for sure, but at least you're choosing the movie you watch. Imagination is the most magical power we possess. It's behind every invention, every piece of art, every step forward. But untrained, it's also what pulls us into our deepest holes. That's why Stoicism doesn't teach you to fight your imagination. It teaches you to rise above it, to master it, and to make it serve you instead of haunting you day after day. In the next part, we'll go deeper into a subtle but powerful aspect, how you label your emotions. Because maybe the problem isn't the feelings you have, but the names you give them. And sometimes changing a single name can change the entire experience. Part 5. Emotional labels, from slave to storyteller. An emotion doesn't hurt you. The name you give it does. Pause and think. A sensation arises in your body, a tightness in your chest, a flutter in your stomach, a heartbeat slightly quicker than normal. These are just data points, neutral, no name, no meaning. But the moment you label it, I'm anxious, I'm scared, I feel powerless, everything changes. The label doesn't just describe the sensation, it activates an entire web of beliefs, memories, and reactions. That emotion is no longer a fleeting ripple. It becomes a story, an identity, a definition. The same twist in the stomach could be called butterflies by an artist, game time readiness by an athlete, and a panic attack by a chronic worrier. And the strange thing is, they're all right, not because the feeling is different, but because the story they tell about it is. You see, emotions are not inherently good or bad. They are merely ripples across the surface of your mental lake. It's the label you slap on them, the narrative you attach, that determines whether you sink into suffering or float in serenity. And this leads us to one of the most powerful human abilities, the right to rename your emotions. Imagine a rainy day, gray sky, wet roads, chilly air. For someone worn out by a tough week, it might prompt a sigh. Ugh, rain again. So depressing, so bleak, like the world is against me. But the same rain to someone else, with a book and a cup of tea, might mean, what a peaceful day. The rain soothes me. I can finally slow down and breathe. The rain doesn't change. The interpretation does. And therefore, so does the emotional experience. That's why you may never fully control the outside world, but you always have control over the meaning you assign to what happens. When you say, I feel like a failure, you're not just describing an emotion. You're locking yourself into a narrative. But shift the language to, I'm learning to adapt after something didn't work. And your internal energy changes. From collapse to recovery. From judgment to awareness. From victim to learner. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That's not emotional fluff. That's a life strategy, a method to reclaim sovereignty over your inner world amid chaos. And do you know the most magical part? When you redefine your emotions, you reshape your emotional future. Someone who believes anxiety is a weakness will avoid it, suppress it, only to make it stronger. Someone who sees anxiety as a signal to prepare better will learn to listen and act. Someone who thinks anger is shameful will bury it until it explodes. Another who sees anger as a boundary alert will communicate limits without harm. Do you see now? Emotions themselves don't create your suffering. The story you tell about them does. You can continue living like a slave, dragged around by old labels you picked up long ago. Or you can rise, pick up the pen, and rewrite your emotional vocabulary. Happiness isn't a state. Happiness is interpretation. And you are the scriptwriter of your own life. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the engine behind this entire system. The place where thoughts are born, raised, and sometimes automated to the point that you don't even know they're running you. It's time to enter the core, how the mind works. Part 6. The mechanics of the mind. Don't pull weeds, plant new seeds. You can't rip anxiety out by the root, but you can grow something else. This is one of the deepest truths about how the mind works, and also where most of us fail. We try to clean up the mind by resisting negative thoughts, pushing them away, forbidding them from showing up. But have you noticed? The more you try to force them out, the louder they come back. As if shouting, "Stop worrying," only makes your brain hear the word worry even clearer. Like when I tell you, don't think about a pink elephant, and suddenly a dancing pink elephant shows up in your mind. The mind doesn't operate by deletion. It operates by replacement. You can't just tell it what not to think. You have to give it something else to focus on. And here's the key. Instead of obsessing over pulling weeds, learn to plant new seeds. Picture your mind as a vast garden. Every thought is a seed. You might have unknowingly sown seeds of fear, envy, or self-doubt, and before long the weeds take over. If you spend every day trying to yank each one out, you'll be exhausted. But if you begin planting seeds of gratitude, calm, and solution-focused thinking, you're doing something much smarter. As those new seeds sprout and grow, they begin to crowd out the weeds. Your garden starts to shift, not because you eradicated the bad, but because you nurtured the good. And the best part? You get to choose your seeds every single day. You can start your morning asking, "What am I anxious about today?" Or, "What good might come my way today?" You can let your mind automatically spiral into worst-case scenarios, or you can pause, take a deep breath, and guide it with a constructive thought. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's greatest thinkers, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That line may sound simple, but it holds the root of inner freedom. Because once you understand that you can choose your thoughts, you are no longer a victim of your mind. You become its master. The problem is, most of us don't know what we're choosing. We live in emotional autopilot. An emotion rises, a thought appears, a behavior follows. It's like a domino effect with no break in the chain. But the moment you pause, observe, and recognize, I'm feeling anxious. I'm imagining the worst. But what if I choose a different thought? You just switch from being controlled to being in control. No one can control every thought they have, but everyone can decide which thoughts get watered, nurtured, and grown. Like you can't stop weed seeds from blowing into your garden, but you can choose what grows in its heart. If you spend a few minutes daily writing down one thing you're grateful for, one moment you felt proud, one idea you want to act on, you're planting good seeds. And when anxious winds blow, you'll have roots to hold on to. Because that's the nature of the mind. If you don't point it towards something useful, it will default back to the familiar. And sadly, what's familiar for most of us is fear, criticism, and failure narratives. Don't let your mind become an abandoned field where weeds run wild. Make it a garden with an owner, tended daily with thoughts you truly want to live with. You can't eliminate all worry, all fear, but you can plant something else. You can make your garden so vibrant, so full, that weeds have nowhere left to grow. And that is your power, the power to replant your life, one thought at a time. In the next part, we'll step into a special dimension where you not only gain control over your thoughts, but also begin to create distance from your mind itself. Because sometimes to be truly free, you must step back and observe it all from afar. Part 7. Cognitive distance. You are not your thoughts. You are the sky, not the dark clouds passing through. No matter how many storms roll in, no matter how thick the cloud cover, the sky remains its true nature. Vast, calm, open. Just like you. You are not the anxiety, the fear, the anger, or the stream of scattered thoughts that show up each day. You are the one observing them, the still foundation beneath everything that flows by. But most of the time we forget that. We fuse ourselves with whatever shows up in our minds. A negative thought appears, and we take it as truth. A heavy emotion surfaces, and we let it define our entire day. And when that happens often enough, we lose sight of where we end, and the mind begins. We get swept away without even knowing we slipped. That's when a crucial skill needs to be practiced. Creating distance from your thoughts and emotions, also known as meta-awareness, the awareness of awareness itself. It begins simply, but runs deep. It starts with labeling what you're experiencing. Not I am anxious, but I'm feeling anxiety. Not I am weak, but I'm experiencing a moment of vulnerability. Just by shifting the structure of a sentence, you're no longer the emotion. You become the one looking at it from the outside. Imagine standing next to a river. The water flows past, carrying leaves, branches, bits of trash, even mud. That's your stream of thoughts and emotions. You have two choices: jump in and flail around trying to grab every piece, or stand quietly on the bank and watch it all pass by. You don't try to stop the water. You don't try to hold back the storm clouds. You simply stop identifying with them. And something magical happens. They come, and then they go. This isn't emotional detachment. It's emotional positioning. When you say, I'm worried, your mind believes that state is part of who you are. But when you say, there's a feeling of worry moving through me, you create space, a buffer, a breath. And in that space, you regain your power to choose, to keep being driven by it, or to just observe and let it pass. Modern neuroscience confirms what Stoic philosophers knew thousands of years ago. Naming your emotions reduces their power. When you say aloud, this is frustration, this is fear, you are no longer ruled by them in the shadows. You shine the light of awareness onto the reflex. And once there's light, you have choice. Marcus Aurelius used to remind himself, when you wake up in the morning, remember, you have the power to choose your attitude today. But to choose, you must first step outside the autopilot of the mind. To choose, you must know where you're standing, what you're thinking, and what you're feeling. Only then can you say, I feel angry, but I won't let it dictate my actions. Or, I'm feeling anxious, but I can still breathe deeply and keep going. This is what Stoics practice daily, not to become emotionless, but to become the captain of their emotional ship. So they aren't capsized by every wave, but learn to steer, no matter how wild the storm. You are not the clouds. You are the sky. You are not the river. You are the one watching the flow. And when you stand in that place, everything feels lighter, clearer. Not because the emotions disappear, but because you're no longer being swept away. In the next part, you'll learn how to maintain this power not just in fleeting moments, but as a way of life. Because knowing is one thing. Practicing it daily is what turns knowledge into true freedom. Part 8. Practice. Stoicism is not for those seeking magic. Stoicism won't give you a six-pack mind after one meditation session. Just like you can't sculpt abs after a single workout, you won't become calm and unshakable after one inspirational podcast. Yet so many of us expect exactly that. We hope one video, one book, one Stoic quote will heal every old wound, erase decades of anxiety. And when the miracle doesn't happen, we circle back to where we started, disappointed and ready to quit. But Stoicism never promised ease. It's not a spiritual painkiller. It's mental weight training. It's heavy, slow, disciplined. But it builds true strength from the inside out. It teaches you to train every reaction, every thought, every emotion, the way a warrior sharpens their weapon daily, not to show off, but to survive when it matters. Epictetus once said, no great thing is created suddenly. You want a fig? Then let it blossom, bear fruit, and ripen. You can't force the mind to be still just because you want it to be. You must feed it through consistent action, small, steady, repetitive. And it's this quiet repetition, not flashy, not loud, that leads to real transformation. So what exactly should you do? Simple. Keep a daily emotional journal. It might sound old school, even a little cheesy, but it's one of the core Stoic practices. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, left behind a notebook full of self-questioning, self-correction, and quiet reminders to live by reason and values. And you can start the same way, with just 5 minutes each evening. Write down, what did you react to today? What made you confused, angry, or anxious? Could you have handled it differently? How will you choose to respond next time? This isn't harsh self-judgment. It's how you build the muscle of awareness. Every time you pause to reflect on an emotion, you add another layer of insight. And when that layer gets thick enough, you stop reacting on autopilot. You start responding by choice. Mental training doesn't require perfection. It only requires that you show up for your own life. You will stumble. You will have days of chaos. You will snap, worry, get negative. That's human. What matters is you come back. You notice. You learn. You move forward. Even just 1% each day, and you're already moving away from the version of you who's ruled by the mind and toward the one who rules it. And then one day you'll notice a situation that used to enrage you now barely stirs you. A comment that once wounded you for weeks now echoes faintly and fades. A bad day that used to pull you into darkness now feels like a passing cloud you know will drift away. Not because the world suddenly got kinder, but because you got stronger. That is the reward of practice. Not glamorous, not sparkly, but so quietly solid that the outside world can no longer shake you easily. Because you've built an inner world, steady as stone, still as water. Stoicism isn't for those chasing instant fixes. It's for those willing to go slow but deep, patient but powerful. It doesn't ask you to be perfect, only not to give up. And if you've made it this far, I believe you're that kind of person. In the final part, we'll bring everything you've learned together and turn it into a lived practice, because knowing isn't enough. Daily action is what will truly change you. Part 9, The Call. Peace isn't far away, it begins with you. You've come this far, through 8 chapters, 8 essential pieces of the puzzle that forms a complete picture of mastering your mind and emotions in the spirit of Stoicism. We began in the darkest place, feeling imprisoned by our own thoughts. We saw that the mind can be either an angel or a kidnapper, depending on who holds the wheel. We learned that emotions aren't enemies to escape, but signals to understand and steer with intention. Then came imagination, the silent director of horror films in our heads, which can become a creative partner if we dare to rewrite the script. We pause to examine the labels we slap onto emotions and realize that it's not the emotion itself that causes suffering, but the meaning we attach to it. We venture deeper into the mind, the place where thoughts are fed or forgotten, and saw that instead of pulling weeds, we can simply plant more flowers. Then we practiced stepping back, observing emotions as a river flowing by, rather than diving in and getting swept away. And finally, we understood that no miracle comes overnight. Only daily practice, breath by breath, moment by moment, can lead us back to ourselves. All of this is not to turn you into someone perfect, emotionless, or superhuman. It's to help you live more honestly, more deeply, more deliberately, to help you see that negative emotions are not villains. They're signals, waves, lessons. If you try to destroy them, they'll fight back. But if you learn to listen, you'll learn to guide them. And slowly, you'll find peace. Not because the world has changed, but because you've changed how you walk through it. If you found value in these lessons, don't keep them to yourself. Share them, live them, replant them through your actions, your words, your way of treating yourself and others. You don't need to preach stoicism to spread it. Just stay cool-headed when others lose theirs. Stay warm-hearted when others grow cold. Stay aware when life gets chaotic. And always remember this: you can't choose everything that happens, but you can always choose who you become because of it. You, no one else. Peace isn't somewhere out there. It begins with you. And you begin right here, right now.